Grown-ups only, they said of a family dinner, excluding my grieving grandson. I silently hit record. Now they're begging me to stop the video. As twilight descends upon the Boston suburbs, I see my house, Patricia Henderson's home, nestled in Brookline's tranquil residential section, right alongside the lines of brick houses. My meticulously kept yard displays roses in a kaleidoscope of hues, all in vibrant bloom. A gentle, early summer breeze softly brushes against my cheek, my silver hair sways. At 62, I settle into my favorite armchair, positioned by the window, and I gaze at the bird feeder I have in my garden. My pearl necklace shines gently, reflecting the fatting sunlight. Ever since I retired from Brookline Private Elementary School, after 30 years of work, I have been living quiet, relaxing days for 2 years now. I usually put on a chic two-piece suit from Brooks Brothers and enjoy classical music while working in my garden, a daily schedule I've grown used to. Holding my phone in my hand, I recall my teaching days and say I used to record anything and everything when problems arose back then. Even the smallest issues with students could be quickly resolved with video proof. That particular practice is still very much a part of me. It's been a half-decade since my husband George passed away. Despite my sophisticated and intellectual way of life that I still enjoy within our cherished home, which has been paid off for over 3 decades, our family has gone through dramatic changes. From my window, I can see the magnolia tree George planted in the garden. I can still clearly picture young Michael playing right beneath it. The transformation in my son, Michael, is especially noticeable. After his promotion at State Street Corporation, his typically amiable nature has shifted, morphing into a detached workaholic. Weekends even now, it's typical to see him in his suit, taking work calls while sipping pricey scotch. My heart truly breaks when I consider my grandson Tommy, who is 8 years old. Ever since Sarah, his mother, passed away 2 years ago, their connection has become even deeper. We always spend weekends together, watching Little League, and I feel a mother's love as I see Tommy carefully cleaning the baseball glove that Sarah gave him. But everything took a turn when Michael married Victoria, a real estate agent. This new woman, with her immaculate blonde hair and high-end clothing, brought subtle, upsetting changes to our family. Vicky pretends to be the ideal stepmother. She wakes up at 5 in the morning to go to the gym and effortlessly balances her job with her household tasks, looking like she's on the cover of a magazine. But underneath this relentless pursuit of perfection, Tommy has slowly become distanced from us all. Tommy, who goes to Brookline Private Elementary School, barely cracks a smile anymore. More and more often he comes to my house unexpectedly, whispering, "Grandma's house is where I feel best." Those words, though from a quiet, intelligent child, make me feel so uneasy. Michael isn't the only one who's different. The sky outside is turning a deep shade of purple as dusk arrives. Sometimes I think about Vicky, and I've heard she is visiting Mass General Fertility Center. I absolutely get the pain of trying to build a family in a new and different way. As I watched the birds come down into my yard, I thought about my son and his wife, and their apparently ideal existence in their swanky Back Bay place. My grandson, at the same time, was becoming more and more reserved. I had no idea how much more my family would evolve. Then one day in June, my phone went off. I stopped what I was doing, which was rearranging my china, and glanced at the screen. It was my son, Michael. "Mom, I have fantastic news," he said. The joy was obvious in his voice. He'd finalized a huge investment deal with Singapore and gotten promoted to the VP spot in the Global Investment Division. I could even hear the ice in his drink clinking, which showed how thrilled he was. "We're having a celebratory dinner at La Jardin next Friday. Big clients will be there. It's going to be a family thing." La Jardin is, as everyone knows, the swankiest French restaurant in Boston. It's in a refurbished 1800s French building in Back Bay. The set menu started at $250 per person, which showed its exclusivity. "Oh, that's great. Tommy will be so happy. He's been really getting into French food." A quiet moment happened on the phone. Then Michael's voice changed. I could slightly hear Vicky talking in the background. "This time we thought it would just be family," he continued, "which is to say, grown-ups only." Vicky mentioned the clients weren't bringing their kids either. The doorbell startled me. I felt bad, Mom. I'd fill her in soon. The phone connection had been cut off. Standing in the doorway was Tommy, his face wet with tears, and he still had his backpack on from school. It was Grandma. Immediately, I held him close. His little body shook. "What's the matter? Please tell me everything that happened." Settling on the living room couch, I stroked Tommy's hair with care. He held onto his baseball glove very tightly. It was about the dinner they were holding to celebrate Dad and Vicky. I gave him time as the words came out, interrupted by his sobs. They said it was just for family. But as he spoke, the depth of Tommy's pain became clear to me. He didn't fit into what they considered family. He wasn't part of their family only. I had overheard it on the phone. But you absolutely are family, I told him. The most important family of all. But Vicky told him it was an adult's dinner. You're an outsider, she said. Tommy's words hit me hard. Outside the window, I noticed birds pecking on the ground. The idyllic scene felt strange now. I felt the phone pressed against my back. My old habit from teaching, the need for proof to solve issues, suddenly took on a new importance. Then the phone rang again. It was Vicky this time. Looking at the screen, I knew what I needed to do. Hello, Victoria, I answered. Even though my voice stayed calm, my heart felt cold. Yes, Tommy is here. Don't worry. I'd already instructed Tommy to come straight here from school, I explained. Vicky's voice sounded worried and annoyed. I could even hear what sounded like fancy real estate deals going on in the background. Regarding the get-together, since our guests won't have kids with them, it will be an adults-only dinner, so maybe another time for Tommy. Victoria, Patricia stated, her voice soft but resolute. We should talk about this. At La Jardin, what but? Friday, 6 p.m. Tommy and I are absolutely going to be there. Previously. As she ended the call, she picked up Vicky's bewildered exhale. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room was quiet. Tommy was warm in her arms. Patricia's determination grew stronger. Maybe it was the right moment to use the recording feature on her phone and for its intended purpose. Everything will be okay. Grandma will look out for you. That night, Tommy ate dinner with his grandmother. Patricia fixed his favorite macaroni and cheese with the intention of easing his worries a bit. During the course of dinner, Tommy spoke up out of the blue. Hey, Grandma. Did Dad act differently after Mom passed away in the accident? The question caught me off guard, and I couldn't immediately speak. However, I decided to tackle this honestly. Yes, sorrow can really change people. Nevertheless, I am certain your dad's real goodness still exists within him. I think Vicky doesn't like me, Tommy remarked, poking at his macaroni with his fork. Yesterday, I overheard her conversing with Dad on the phone. She said at this rate, Tommy would become too coddled to ever amount to anything in business. Those statements ignited anger in me. What did they want from a child of 8 years? But maintaining a straight face, I inquired, how is Vicky doing these days? I get up before anyone else and I always make an amazing breakfast. But if I don't tell her how tasty it is, she gets really upset. Tommy then spoke in a hushed tone. Each evening when she gets back from the hospital, she's always in tears. My dad doesn't seem to be aware of what's happening. Patricia was imagining Vicky going through fertility treatments. There were deep emotional scars beneath her need to be perfect. Yet that didn't excuse how she treated her grandson. Later that evening, after driving Tommy home, Patricia, started to get ready for Friday. I pulled out the Chanel suit George had given me for their last Christmas from my closet. George, I'm going to wear your gift to protect our grandson one last time. Looking at my phone settings, Patricia, smiled to myself. It was strange to realize that my experience recording difficult parent conferences during my years of teaching was actually going to be useful now, when dealing with my own child. The dinner at La Jardin was only 3 days away. Standing near the window, I gazed up at the night sky. The next day, I would go to the restaurant to check it out, just to be on the safe side, and I would get ready to record everything just in case the worst happened. It was Friday, 6 p.m., and a taxi smoothly arrived in front of La Jardin, carrying Tommy and me. The building that had been meticulously designed in a French style reminiscent of the 1800s had an elegant presence in the fading light of the day. Grandma, I'm so nervous, Tommy said. Squeezing his hand, I just nodded silently. I'm a little anxious myself, honestly, but it'll all be okay. As we walked towards the entrance, we saw the private garden. I noticed the bird feeders were gracefully set up on the neatly kept grass. Looking at the area seemed to make Tommy's face relax a bit. It's Monsieur Henderson's party, right? The manager at the front desk looked puzzled. I'm sorry, but I don't see your names listed for today. Then suddenly Vicky and Michael Hartman rushed up. Michael was dressed in a new Brooks Brothers suit, and Vicky looked great in a Chanel outfit. Mom, we'll discuss it later. The guests today are. Michael's sentence was cut short by the guests' arrival. James Chen, the boss of State Street Corporation's Asian branch, came with his family. Oh, the Henderson family. Surprisingly, standing next to Chen was a young girl, probably 10 years old. This is my daughter, Amy. We brought the family here so she could have Boston childhood memories. Everything went quiet. Vicky and Michael looked uneasy. We also came as a whole family, Patricia declared, remaining calm and composed. This is my grandson, Tommy. Everyone settled into their seats beneath the sparkle of the crystal chandelier. Tommy sat beside Patricia, his small body shaking a little. Through the window, birds were eating at the food in the dusklit garden. As the waiters began serving the fancy food, Michael started drinking more and more. The smell of expensive scotch filled the air. Mr. Henderson, your son is turning into quite a nice young man. At Chen's comment, Michael's face changed. Vicky kept her perfect smile, even though her hands were shaking. Tommy is. Right when Michael was about to say something, something totally unexpected happened. All of a sudden, I heard birds taking off from right outside. Michael immediately stood up and went out to the patio. It's like it's a meal for someone who's not part of the group. He got the birdseed and tossed it on the restaurant floor. This place just doesn't seem right for somebody who's not part of the inner circle. My wife, Vicky, was standing there next to her husband with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I said, "Tommy, I'm so sorry. It appears that it's just become too intense for you." While the people around us were looking confused, Patricia subtly got her phone out of her purse. That red recording light had already been flashing for what felt like ages. She put her arms around Tommy's shoulders, got up quietly. "Michael and Victoria, is this really the type of family you're hoping to create?" Her voice rang out clear and forceful, as bright as the light coming from the fancy chandelier. Chen's daughter, Amy, was practically glued to her dad. Michael's face appeared to falter a bit when he saw that. "Oh, look at the gorgeous sight," Vicky interjected out of the blue, pointing outside. The sky at dusk had become a deep violet color, and the birds were going back to the feeders. That scene somehow felt like an unintentional reflection of what was happening to us all. At the family counseling room at Massachusetts General Hospital. A week after the thing that happened at Lujardin, the Henderson family were there, facing each other quietly. Sunlight poured in from the big window, and Dr. Sarah Martinez, our counselor, started by speaking to Vicky. "Victoria, would you like to tell us anything?" Gently touching her flawless hairdo, Vicky started to speak, her voice wavering. "I just wanted everything to be picture-perfect when it came to family." Tears began to stream down her face at that instant. Those fertility treatments are a failure, making it impossible for someone like me to have kids, and then there's Tommy. Words caught in Vicky's throat. Her typically perfect facade disappeared, exposing a face etched with immense sadness. "My mom always used to say I was unfit to run a family. Mistreatment from my birth mother left a deep impact on my feelings. This is precisely why I was so driven, trying to be the ultimate wife, the ideal mother." Michael's eyes grew wide as his wife confessed. "Vicky, why did you never tell me? I simply couldn't. Your career was progressing so successfully, I didn't want to be the one to hinder you." Dr. Martinez gave a quiet nod, then faced Michael. "Michael, would you share about the struggles you're experiencing?" His hand tightened around his glass. His normal, self-assured expression as an investment banker slowly faded. The workload at the office was definitely significant. Nevertheless, that doesn't justify anything. After taking a deep breath, he continued. "Ever since we lost Sarah, it's been a challenge to look at Tommy. His eyes, his smile remind me so much of her." Michael's voice started to tremble abruptly. "I attempted to get away from the hurt of the past by building a new family, yet ultimately I forgot what mattered most." Tommy listened quietly as his father spoke. His little eyes showed a blend of comprehension and uncertainty. "I had sent the video to the counselor, but it turned out to be unnecessary to play it. Everyone in the family was letting their real emotions out on their own. Maybe the idea of a perfect family is just a myth," I thought, recalling Dr. Martinez's words in that silent space. "What really matters is being okay with everyone's flaws and being supportive when things get tough." Outside, I could see birds taking a break in the hospital's courtyard. It felt like the beginning of something fresh. "Tommy, would you like to tell us how you feel too?" Dr. Martinez's soft voice hung in the air, and the room seemed to freeze for a beat. Everyone's attention shifted towards Tommy. Clutching the baseball glove his mom gave him, he started to speak softly. I was frightened when Dad changed, but I didn't realize he was so unhappy." He paused, searching for the right words. "And Vicky, you don't have to be perfect. My mom wasn't either, and that's what made it fun." Hearing his genuine words, tears started to stream down Vicky's face. I felt that way too, I realized. But the walls I'd built inside were too high to climb. I watched silently, then finally added my own thoughts. Sometimes families end up hurting each other, but what's truly important is finding the strength to move past that. Dr. Martinez gave a small nod and asked one last question. "So, what does your perfect family look like?" We all looked around at each other, searching for the answer. Surprisingly, after a long silence, Tommy spoke first. "A family where everyone thinks about each other." The expressions on the grown-ups' faces changed when those sincere words were spoken. In that final session, Patricia discreetly pulled out her phone. The phone displayed the video taken that evening. Initially, I planned on keeping this proof of everything. The silent recording of everything that transpired at Lujardin played. Beneath those sparkling chandeliers in that fancy restaurant, the family's problems became painfully clear. Birdseed scattered on the floor. Vicky's icy grin. And Tommy's body shaking with fear. But now I'm considering deleting it. We don't require it any longer. Just as Patricia was about to touch the screen, Tommy stopped her hand. In his hand was the baseball glove his mom had gotten him. "Wait, Grandma," he said. He stood up and looked right at his dad and Vicky. His eyes didn't show any fear. Instead, they showed a calm inner resolve. "Let's keep this video. I believe there are things things we shouldn't ever forget. Michael looked directly at his son. His usual affectionate gaze was back. The smell of scotch had vanished. You're right, let's keep this as a memory, or better yet, a documentation of our fresh start. Vicky slightly disheveled her perfectly done hairstyle, and for the first time she showed a real smile. The frown lines on her brow had naturally relaxed. Tommy, I'm sorry, I'm through trying to be ideal. Instead, I'm eager to learn more about you. About Sarah, your mom. It's all right to make mistakes. Mom used to mess up in the kitchen all the time, but that's what made it fun. Vicky gave Tommy a hug. In her embrace, his trembling slowly disappeared. My heart seemed to echo theirs. Michael came to join them and they all hugged. I smiled inwardly as I observed this moment. A month had passed and we were at La Jardin again. Now the whole family was seated at a round table. Everything was the same, the crystal chandeliers and the view of the garden, but the vibe was different. Dad, I said, can we inquire how they make this sauce? I wanted to try to create it at home with Vicky. Tommy's eyes lit up with excitement. Vicky had let go of her usual perfect poise, and she just relaxed a bit in her chair, smiling. Today she wasn't dressed in her designer suit. Let's ask the chef, I proposed. But remember, if we get it wrong when we try at home, it's all right. Making mistakes could even be enjoyable. Michael had his phone tucked away in his bag. He wouldn't take any work calls tonight. Even his habit of glancing at his watch was gone. I watched this new scene quietly. Out in the garden, birds were peacefully sharing scattered crumbs. The scene seemed to reflect our own image. It wasn't perfect, but that was fine. Our family would keep changing, no doubt, as long as we remembered to care for one another. The crystal glasses sitting on the table sparkled in the fading light. The lights seemed to be blessing the beginning of our new family.